Okay, so let's look at factors and multiples. Factors and multiples. What is a factor? What is a factor? And what is a multiple? Okay, for us to understand this concept properly in mathematics, let's look at a parent and a child. A parent and a child. The child is the factor and the parent is the multiple. Why is the child a factor? Because the child is gotten out from the parent. The child is gotten out from the parent. So the parent is a multiple and the child is a factor. Remember, when you came out from your parent, precisely your mother, when you came out from your mother, you never left a part of yourself in your mother. Your hand was not left in your mother's womb, but you came out complete. Your leg was not left there. So a factor is a number that divides a multiple with a remainder of 0 or no remainder. Now, I'm using the word with a remainder of 0 because 0 is also part of a set of number known as the whole number system. So it's like saying a factor is a number that divides a multiple with a remainder of 0. Or you can as well define a factor as a number that divides a multiple or that divides another number called the multiple without a remainder. Without a remainder. So once the remainder is more than 0, like 1, 2, or 3, and more, that number will not be considered a factor. Why? Because the remainder is more than 0. So any number that divides another number and the remainder is 0, or there's no remainder apart from 0, that number is called a factor. That number is called a factor. When the remainder is 1 or 2 or 3 and above, that number is not considered as a factor. It is only considered as a factor if there is no remainder or if the remainder is 0. If the remainder is 0 or there's no remainder, then that number that divides the other number to have such result that is not more than 0, that number is called a factor. So if you ask what is a factor, just say a factor is a number that divides another number called the multiple, leaving a remainder of 0. A number that divides another number called the multiple, leaving a remainder of 0. That number is called a factor. For example, you have 10 divided by 2. 2 into 10 is 5, and the remainder is 0. So 2 is called a factor and 10 is called a multiple. So if you ask okay, first you should understand here that apart from defining a factor as a number that divides another number, leaving a remainder of 0, you can as well define a factor or factors as two numbers or more, or a factor is a number that multiplies another number to get what is called a multiple. A factor or factors are numbers that multiply themselves to get a result known as multiple. For example, 2 times 5. is equal to 10. So 2 is a factor of 10, and 5 is also a factor of 10, and 10 is the multiple. So when you multiply two numbers or more, the result you get is called the multiple. But those numbers that multiply themselves are regarded as factors of the other number called the multiple. So a factor is a number that multiplies another number to get a result known as the multiple. So I've given you two definitions of what a factor is. One, I say a factor is a number that divides another number, leaving a remainder of 0. Now I'm saying a factor is also considered as a number that multiplies another number to get a result known as the multiple. So with all this explanation, if you're asked what is a multiple, you should be able to explain that better, that a multiple is a number that is a product, that is a result or the product of two factors. A multiple is a number that is a result of the product of two or more factors. So when you multiply two or more factors, what you get is called the multiple. So a multiple is that number that you get when two or more factors multiply themselves. Example, 2 times 5 gave us 10. So 10 is the multiple, and it is a product of 2 and 5. Yes, the product when 2 and 5 are multiplied, you get 10. So 10 is called the multiple, 2 and 5 are called the factors of 10, and 10 is called the multiple. You can also define a multiple as that number that a factor divides and leave a remainder of 0. A multiple is that factor that when divided by a multiple is that number that when divided by a factor will leave a remainder of 0. A multiple is that number that when divided by a factor, the remainder will be 0. That number is called a multiple. So you must understand that. That is how you define a multiple. That number that when divided by a factor, the remainder is 0. So if you have 20 divided by 5, your answer is 4. Remainder 0. So 20 is called the multiple and 5 is called the factor. Now you also see that when you multiply 5 times 4, you get 20. So 5 is a factor of 20, 4 is also a factor of 20, and 20 is a multiple. So you must get this into you, and you should be able to apply them properly. So today we've learned what a factor is and what a multiple is. So in our next other class, we shall be looking at another aspect of factors and multiples. So see you in our next other class.